here. So again, thinking of another aspect of remote medicine, remote care. And one of them is actually right here, right? So I've got one of these wearables and it tells me all sorts of things about my health and tells me to breathe because apparently I need to be reminded to breathe. And we're using more and more of these things in our regular life. And telemedicine is going in so many interesting directions. I recently saw a fascinating development, very focused. This organization, it's Turkish group actually, and they're focused on the intensive care unit, where you've got multiple data sources that don't talk to each other. And they've created this interoperability platform so that you can take all the information in a highly deployable fashion and put it onto a personal digital assistant, a computer, and create alarm sets for you as the physician based on your needs. That's one example of a very targeted approach of utilizing data, access to communications, and technology in a very, very useful and very high cost, high acuity situation. What are some of the other areas that you think could be adopted? Scott, do you want to take a crack at that first?
Yeah, I'm familiar with other kinds of mission control approaches to the intensive care unit as well, especially for kind of rural hospitals here in the United States. They can kind of outsource their ICU monitoring to a third party, and they can be watching for the red flags or red and yellow as they evolve. So I think that really is a great opportunity. That we probably are only listening or interpreting maybe the top 5% most obvious information coming from patients, but it's all out there. The early warning signs for impending heart failure, arrhythmia, stroke, what have you. And so as we can apply machine learning and deep learning to all the terabytes of data that's coming from our patients, we can probably get well out in front of disease as well. So the worried well wearing the Fitbit or what have you is going to be really disruptive. But I'm associated with a company that is trying to use some smart algorithms to get ahead of congestive heart failure. So you've had a heart attack, you go home. It'd be nice to know 3 or 4 days ahead of development of CHF that something bad's going to happen. It's time to tune up your Lasix or something like that. So,
and in fact, CHF is the most common cause of a fatal dysrhythmia, right? If
that's correct.
Your fluid balance goes out of whack.
And very, very expensive to the hospital system as well. Sure. If there's a bounce back, it's out of pocket for the hospital system. So there are major incentives to do this.
Interesting. Yulun, do you want to comment?
Yeah. So, Teladoc actually completed its acquisition of a company called Livongo last week, which did chronic disease management. And they focused on initially diabetes, but then now also hypertension, obesity, and I think those were the main three, where they basically getting live streaming analytics from, for example, your wearable. They also have things like scales and pulse ox and other things that they put in the patient's home, but they actually capture that data on a continuous basis, and then they use their AI algorithms in order to do, they call them nudges, which is just to try to get the people who they are helping to serve stay on course with their treatment of diabetes. So for example, a diabetic who loves to run, it would create a 5-day running program in order to keep that person on track. A diabetic who loves to swim, it would be more customized and it'd be a personalized. A diabetic who is very into different kinds of foods, it would do particular types of programs for the particular patients in order to keep them on track. And they've actually done very well and have been able to really show and improve quality of life at a lower cost. So that's one category. A category I've been more involved in the last many years is in using AI to improve the telemedicine interaction. So for example, so right now we're talking in a sense like a telemedicine interaction. Jonathan, I'm looking at you. I can't see your pulse rate, but if I put a machine learning algorithm in between you and me, it can tell me that your pulse rate is 60 right now, because there are very, very subtle changes in your skin tone, which I can't see, but the computer can see. It can actually analyze sentiments of you in terms of how often are you smiling or frowning, and it can provide me with improved information. So that's kind of another category of innovations that we can do in order to help make telemedicine and digital health as capable as possible.
In fact, there it is, right there.
Hey, that's 64.
Yeah. Normally my resting pulse rate's a little lower, but with you two guys.
You rounded down. That's fine. That was a good, perfect answer.
There we go. There we go. So Scott, back when you and I were at medical school, we were taught the laying on of hands was important. Human touch was important. Now you can get a lot from it. You hold someone's hand, their palm is sweaty, they're anxious. Maybe they've got, maybe they've got hypertension. Maybe you can feel their pulse. Maybe you can feel that their hand is a bit weak. But then there's also the comfort you can give to a human being who's frightened, who's in distress. We can't do that. It's a part of the medical interaction. How do we need to forget that? Do we need to move on and just grow up, or?
Well, I do think that it comes down to this teletriage to a degree. And perhaps medicine is once a year. If you're a senior citizen, by routine you do see your doctor in person, but the quarterly visits would be done remotely. I do think that there's a need for that interpersonal interaction, as you suggest. But the resources are getting better. So there are some interesting AR types of technologies, and it's much more than an avatar, but kind of a three-dimensional construct. You can come into a common area and have a more natural kind of visual, auditory, immersive engagement with a person. So I think as those technologies get a little bit better, more of a holographic kind of an AR type of an engagement, may benefit, and hold on to that that physician-patient bond that you're talking about. But I haven't given up yet on the ability to have sensors that could palpate, to feel for the spleen tip, and could be applied on a patient and allow for tactile diagnostics to be shared remotely. So there may be some things in the future that could be done. I don't know that I question the value of it. It would probably be fairly complex electromechanically, and at that point, perhaps we'd have better ability to send ultrasounds into the home. Maybe that's the solution for some of these things.
Well, it's one for you to solve there, Yulun. And as we're talking about the cost of developing these things, it's not inexpensive, right? These technologies are not inexpensive. And I remember when developing the first robotics, we were talking about the morality of that. How do we deal with that? How do we bridge the economic gap? America spends roughly twice per capita on healthcare compared to other OECD countries, roughly 18% of GDP, and does not have health outcomes, frankly, that are any better. In fact, some are much worse. But might this be a case of penny wise, pound foolish? Could telemedicine, although the cost of acquiring the technology might be expensive, could it lead to improved outcomes and reduce overall costs?
So I would answer unequivocally yes. And I think that, if you think about the intent of the technology, it enables the leveraging of people like Scott and yourself across a much broader geography, with much more immediacy. And if you can get I think nobody would argue with the fact that if you could cost effectively get the right expertise to the right place at the right time, you can actually lower the cost of medicine and improve quality simultaneously. And so that's kind of an overarching concept and a capability that telemedicine brings to bear. It also brings access, which would never have happened before. And it also brings ease of use. I don't think that people view our healthcare system as particularly easy to use. But again, telemedicine can actually help bring ease of use, because as we've talked about earlier in this conversation, the ability to get your healthcare while sitting in your home. And so I think that it's one of the reasons I'm personally very passionate about telemedicine, is because you could work on a new heart valve or new cure for cancer, which are great, okay, but they do net raise the cost of healthcare. Telemedicine, I think, is one of the few technologies which could actually raise the standard of quality of healthcare, but lower costs simultaneously.
If I can add on to, I agree with everything you just said, Yulun. I wanted to talk also on the broader costs of healthcare in the United States, which are, abysmal, especially for the value that we, on average derive from it. And I think the broader concept of telehealth and the nudges that you were describing, we need to get ahead of disease. It's preventative rather than curative or therapeutic. We need to prevent advanced chronic diseases from ever occurring, or certainly to slow their progression. That's how we save lots and lots of money. And as a society that's still addicted to fast food, and there's still cigarette smoking and other bad habits, we need to address those things with preventative measures. The broader concept of telehealth, big bang for the buck there.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I know for sure, anyone who says that solving problems in healthcare is easy, they don't know what they're talking about. This is tough stuff. So I want to stay with you, Scott, a little bit from a medical practice perspective. There's licensure issues. I remember the first time that when I was practicing in the United States, we were having ECGs or EKGs, as some people style them, read in a different state. The electrophysiology cardiologist was in a different state, and there were issues about licensure. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with data protection, right? How do we deal with people's paranoia? I mean, there are some real issues with data protection, right? But how do we deal with some of these legal issues? Scott, you go first, then Yulun weigh in.
It's a great question, and it is challenging. And I think the licensure issues have thwarted the more rapid growth of telemedicine, because there's a provider of telepsychiatry in Texas, but they're limited. Their practitioners are only licensed in the state of Texas, so they can't practice across the country where there's great need. So it's difficult for businesses to scale their businesses, for telemedicine enterprises to scale their business if they don't have licensed physicians in multiple states. The other limiting factor, I think, is just billing codes. And of course, the pandemic has kind of opened the gates to making it possible to count these encounters as billable encounters as if you were in an office. So that's a very good thing. Makes it possible for telemedicine to scale. But you're right that we are in an environment almost in a post secure world where there's almost an inevitability that cybersecurity is going to fail. Even with the most advanced systems, there are going to be ways to work our ways into data systems. So I think perhaps the technology of blockchain could provide not only some security, but some data veracity, some tags to our health data. And we own the keys to that data set. We carry it around with us in our smart device or on our, our Fitbit, or Apple Watch. So I think that we will have more control of our own data sets. We'll carry it with us wherever we go. And when we check into the ER, there'll be a scan, and your whole medical record will be there, and the team can take good care of you. That's kind of a far off vision of how things might go. But I do worry about data security, as I'm sure everyone does. Sure.
Yulun? Comments?
Yeah, so I think Scott said it well. Licensure is, the pandemic has moved us forward on issues around licensure and reimbursement. The phrase out there is it advanced in 6 months what would have otherwise taken 6 years. And so they still are barriers and problems. Don't know exactly where things are going to settle post-pandemic, but there was basically, during the height of it, there is complete immunity, if you will, against licensure issues, and then reimbursement kicked right into place. The issue of privacy, again, I don't have anything more to add than what Scott said. It's just going to be an ongoing battle, as in all industries, financial industry included, where it's just staying ahead of the bad actors with improved technologies and cybersecurity. I think I was at a talk actually about a year ago from an expert in the area, and it's just a constant battle, and he was of the opinion we will be able to stay ahead of it, and we certainly hope we can.
Yeah, so your comment about the pandemic, I relocated back to my native London a number of months ago, and when the pandemic hit, my license here was asleep basically. I had let it not lapse, but it wasn't active, and I wanted to volunteer to help out. 2 hours. 2 hours from submitting the application, I had a license, and I'm thinking, pre-pandemic, 2 months, maybe, if you're lucky. So Yulun, are there any, we often hear about given groups who are resistant to certain technologies. Is that the case with telemedicine? Are the elderly? Because I remember, and that's a loaded question, because I remember with InTouch, when you were first developing it and deploying it in elderly care facilities, quite the opposite. Wasn't that the case?
I think patients have never rejected telemedicine. That's my opinion. It's really been more on the provider side, which has been the harder barrier to overcome. But, the barriers were real, and we hit on them just a second ago, for a big one being reimbursement. If a physician gets paid when someone comes to their office to see them, and doesn't get paid when they see the same patient via telemedicine at home, there's not much of an incentive for the physician to move in that direction. I think those barriers have broken down now for the reasons we talked about. But I don't, in terms of groups of society which are anti-telemedicine, it's minuscule.
And amongst our colleagues, Scott? Well, I was going to reflect on the patient side of it as well. So my parents, both adopted relatively quickly. Octogenarians have iPhones and Android phones now, and they're online. And so I think if this pandemic had happened 5 or 10 years ago, it might have been a different story. But I also, on the physician side, see that physicians, out of concern for their own health, would prefer to have a telemedicine consult, do the initial triage. If someone is sick enough, yes, certainly come to see me, but let's not risk exposure to my staff and to me personally. Let's evaluate it first online like this, and then go from there.
You know, I'm reflecting. I was smiling just when you mentioned that. My late mum was the one who actually taught me to text.
Really?
Yeah, she was, bless her. And in the middle of a text, she'd put LOL. And I responded to her and said, love you too, Mum, but why did you put that in? And I got question mark, question mark, question mark. She said, do you think LOL means lots of love? Because it doesn't, ... I'm not going to tell you what she put next because but I'm going to give a book recommendation. I've already recommended The Sky Below, but there's a marvelous book called When I'm Old, I Shall Wear Purple. And my mum was a devotee of that book. I think you're right. I think that, that human beings are naturally curious, and this technology is going to inspire curiosity. So my final question for both of you, I'm going to ask you to both dream a bit about the future. And you are both dreamers, and you're both men who've taken your dreams and made them real. 100 years from now, I don't know, 20 years from now, where's this technology going to take us? Will we still be doctors? Will there be people like us, or will the machines have taken over? Should we be worried about AI? Should we embrace it? Who wants to go first? Scott?
Okay, I'm happy to take a stab at that. It's a profound question, and there's no right or wrong answers, but so I'll provide one of those. I actually believe the role of healthcare providers, the types of jobs in healthcare will be dramatically different. I think, and similarly in aviation, taking the aviation as a model, there will be pilots on the loop rather than pilots in the loop. And you know what that means as a fellow aviator, but we won't be sticking rudder pilots unless we want to do that for fun. But there will be mission controllers, and there may be a pilot on board to monitor systems, and if something goes wrong, to take over the controls of that aircraft. But there will be smart systems, a lot of data coming in, perhaps a human operator to sift through all the higher level stuff and make the go, no go decisions. I see similar things happening. I don't know if it's 20, 50, 100 years, probably sooner, that certainly some specialties can be put into the machine much easier. Dermatology, radiology are very visual kinds of things, and machines probably can do a better job reading every pixel of an MRI and or a 3D echo than a radiologist or cardiologist could do, quite honestly. No offense to our colleagues, but so when you have that kind of advance and you continue to apply machine learning, AI to these challenging environments, you can assimilate kind of the IBM Watson fund of all knowledge, which is imperfect. It's data trials and things which are not always right, but you can make the best decisions, make the best diagnoses, and so I think healthcare will become a band of technicians as opposed to wise old sages and revered surgeons and physicians and nurses. So that's my long-range view.
Well, you're going to have to stick around 20, 30, 40 years to see if you're right. Yulun?
I hope so, yeah.
I hope so too, my friend.
I think that, so at a high level, if we're trying to achieve a system where everybody has access to quality healthcare in a user-friendly way, which is affordable by society, I think that telemedicine, AI are fundamentally necessary to technologies in order to achieve that. So I think that I strongly believe that these technologies will continue to go and be adopted. How does that impact the people in the healthcare environment? I mean, I think, healthcare is one of the fewer industries where the complaint is not we have too many people. the complaint is we don't have enough, right? We won't have enough nurses. We won't have enough primary care doctors. We won't have enough specialists. We don't have enough, et cetera. Trend lines are continuing to grow as we have more people and more aging population. And then as the specialties keep fragmenting to more and more specialties, subspecialties, it makes it, the problem just gets harder and harder. I do think we do have to be concerned about AI technology in general, in terms of where it's going to go, how it's going to impact society. And I think it can be damaging to society. And I'm speaking about the technology in general when I say that. But I think the AI technology, which is the dominant one today, is machine learning. And it's not that smart, okay? The truth of the matter, it's just a really, it's a new kind of a calculator in a sense. So I don't believe that the specialist, subspecialist in the 50-year time horizon is going to be at risk of being replaced by a machine. Hopefully, with telemedicine combined with AI, we can get everybody to practice at the high end of their license and stuff like that, and take out and then leverage one another, so we don't need infinitely more people to take care of our aging, growing population. But I actually think that I think that, you know, the people and the specialists in any particular field are still going to be at the call it the power position or whatever. I don't know what the right word is, of the different areas. And I think that's how it's going to be for the next many decades. When you get to 100 years, I have no idea. So those are my thoughts.
You know, a number of years ago, one of my teachers back at medical school told us the story that there were 2,000 surgeons in a lecture room listening to someone deliver a lecture. And one surgeon leans over and whispers to the other, "How many truly brilliant surgeons do you think there are in this room?" And the other surgeon says, "One less than you think are here." I mean,
Yeah.
being good is a mixture of being wise and being humble, right? A mixture of humility and wisdom is what we all aspire to. Yeah, I could chat with you guys all day, but sadly I'm told that we have to wrap up here. I want to thank my two amazing guests for joining me today. Scott.
Great to be with you guys. And I really love the banter. And I would love to connect with you offline, Yulun, as well. I think we'd have some other great conversations. So great to have met you here.
I'm sure you would. And Yulun?
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. This is always so fun to talk with you. And Scott, very nice to meet you. And I'll send you an email afterwards.
Fantastic. So to everyone watching, I hope you enjoyed this. I highly recommend, again, I'm not his agent, but I should be, highly recommend you check out Scott's book, The Sky Below. It is full of amazing stories. And also check out his very cool drone controller at fluidity.tech. I hope I got that right, fluidity.tech. Also, please log on to the World Telehealth Initiative.org, worldtelehealthinitiative.org. Again, I've been very lucky to be Yulun's bagman, carrier, I'll do anything for the guy. These are amazing people. See how you can help this noble enterprise. Meanwhile, to everyone listening, watching, stay safe, stay well, and stay connected. Bye for now.